I'm back with a little reboot on this channel. New logo, new intro. I hope also new quality. From now on there will be one video per week on the channel. We'll be discussing current, emotional and crazy topics from all over the football world, whether it's Africa, Asia, Oceania or South America. Today we start with a very emotional story. The 28th of November 2016. A piece of news shocked the entire football world. An aeroplane had crashed in Colombia, and for the majority of the passengers, all help came too late. On board, 77 people, including the staff and players of Brazilian club Chapecoense. 71 of the 77 people on the plane die. From one moment to the next, the entire team and staff are no more. But how could this happen? What happened next for the club? And what happened to the only player from the plane who was able to continue his career afterwards? We discuss all of this in our video of the week, the sad story of Chapecoense. 2016 was to be a historic year for Chapecoense in purely sporting terms. The club reached the final of the Copa Sudamericana, the second most important club competition in South America, for the first time. The team had eliminated San Lorenzo from Argentina in the semi-finals. Atletico Nacional from Colombia, a glorious club, then awaited in the final, so the whole of South America was looking forward to an exciting duel. There was to be a first and second leg, with the first match scheduled for 30th November 2016 at the Estadio Atanasio Girardot in Medellin. The second leg was to take place in Curitiba a week later. However, this was not to happen. Chapecoense chartered several planes to travel to Colombia for the match. The plan was actually to fly directly from Sao Paulo to Medellin, but the Brazilian authorities rejected this due to a number of bureaucratic hurdles. The team flew with planes from the airline La Mia. There was a stopover in Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia, from where the last flight to Medellin finally took off. The airline La Mia was known for working with football teams, as the Argentinian national team had already flown with the aircraft 2 weeks previously. The plane took off from Bolivia at 6:18 p.m. local time, with a planned stopover at Cobija Captain Anibal Arab Airport, near the border, to refuel the aircraft. There were delays on departure, and the plane would not have arrived at the stopover until after the airport had closed. An official from Bolivia's Airports and Air Navigation Service Administration even refused the departure because the range of the aircraft was almost equal to the length of the flight. Another official allowed the aircraft to take off. At around 9:16 p.m., about 77 nautical miles from Bogota, the aircraft displayed a low fuel warning. Despite the proximity to Bogota, the crew decided not to divert there, but continued to head for Medellin. 14 minutes later, at 9:30 p.m., the descent to Medellin began. The air traffic controllers there gave priority to another aircraft, and so a holding loop had to be made. This became 2 loops, and at 9:49 p.m. the crew then requested priority for landing due to problems with the fuel. 3 minutes later, the crew declared a fuel emergency and requested immediate descent clearance. Another minute later, the aircraft was approaching the end of the second holding loop when suddenly engines 3 and 4, both on the right-hand side, failed due to lack of fuel. 2 minutes later, engines 1 and 2 also failed. The flight data recorder stopped working. In response to an inquiry from the tower, the aircraft reported that it was at an altitude of 2,700 meters. However, an aircraft in this position flying into Medellin Airport must be at an altitude of 3,000 meters in order to reach its destination safely. At 9:59 p.m., the plane then crashed into the crest of the Cerro Gordo mountain at an altitude of 2,600 meters. The tailings were later found scattered all over the mountain. The rescue operation began quickly, but there were problems here too. Helicopters from the Colombian Air Force were initially unable to reach the crash site due to the dense fog in the area. The first rescuers only reached the scene 2 hours after the crash. It was not until 2 a.m. that the first survivor was hospitalized, Alan Ruschel, left defender of the team. A total of 6 people were found alive in the wreckage. Backup keeper Jackson Follman had his leg amputated in an emergency operation to save his life. In the end, the sad and upsetting certainty was that 71 of the 77 occupants had not survived. Investigations later revealed that the airline Lamia had consistently sent its fleet off without the legally prescribed fuel loads, and that it was probably rather lucky that nothing had happened beforehand. But how could things continue for a football club that had lost almost its entire team and staff? The final was of course postponed, initially indefinitely. Atletico Nacional offered to agree to Chapecoense winning the title. On the 4th of December 2016, the club's interim president then announced that the CONMEBOL Association had awarded the title and prize money to the club. Probably the saddest title win in football history. Other Brazilian clubs offered to loan out players for free and called on the Brazilian FA to save Chape from relegation for 3 years. The club rejected all of these offers, stating that they wanted to concentrate on a proper rebuild. The association demanded that the club play the next league match in Brazil in memory of the victims of the plane crash, and that it should mainly field players from its own youth team. Both Chapecoense and their opponents Atletico Mineiro refused, and were penalized with a 3-0 defeat. As the reigning champions of Copa Sudamericana, the club automatically qualified for the Copa Libertadores 2017 and thus took part in this competition for the first time in the club's history. But with which players? A team was formed from loan players, players without a club, youth players and 2 players who had survived. The first game was against Zulia FC from Colombia in March, and Chapecoense actually won 2-1. Third place in the group meant that they later progressed to the Copa Sudamericana. There, the team was eliminated in the round of 16 against Flamengo. The league then began again in May with a 1-1 draw against Corinthians on the first match day. The club then finished 8th in the final table. A small leap forward. In November 2019, 3 years after the plane crash, the team was relegated from Serie A with a 0-1 defeat against Botafogo. They then returned in January 2021 with a 2-1 win against rivals Figueirense. However, they were immediately relegated again and are therefore currently playing in Serie B. Perhaps a small consolation. Other big clubs in the country are also currently playing there, with FC Santos and Coritiba FC. And what about the players who survived? Backup keeper Jackson Follman was of course no longer able to play after the amputation, but at least he posted a video on Instagram just 3 months later showing how he had recovered physically and adapted to his prosthetic leg. He now gives speeches to tell his story. For defender Neto, on the other hand, it seemed as if he could return to the pitch. Despite the many injuries he suffered in the plane crash, he fought for his career for 2 years, underwent rehab after rehab, and believed he could at least play one last farewell match. In 2019, he gave up the fight and decided to end his career in consultation with his doctors. He turned down an invitation to come on as a last-minute sub in Chape's final home game of 2019. So there was only Alan Ruschel's comeback. As we remember, he was the first person to be hospitalized after the crash, and just a few weeks later there was footage showing him walking again. He had back surgery, and yet it only took until August 2017 before he returned to the pitch for Chapecoense. Pure goosebumps. On the 7th of August 2017 he played for the first 35 minutes in the Juan Gamper Trophy and received a standing ovation along with his surviving teammates. He made 5 appearances in the league in 2017. He initially stayed with Chape until 2019, when he was loaned out to league rivals Goiás EC. After 4 months, he returned from loan and became a regular for Chape in the 2nd division. He celebrated promotion with the team in January 2021 and then moved to Cruzeiro. This was followed by further stops before he was introduced to Juventude in January 2023. He was promoted from Serie B to Serie A with the team last season and is currently a regular and captain of the team. I think I speak for all of us when I say that I wish him and Juventude nothing but the best. They are currently in mid-table. Chape and the horrible plane crash. One of the most tragic stories in recent football history. Thank you for following the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again soon for the next story that football has written.